Hi, Ciara. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. Looking forward to our chat today on a topic actually that we haven't really discussed much about that I think is so important. I love that you're willing to talk about it and you're working with this specific clientele. So thanks for being here. What I'd love to do to start is, could you share a little bit with our listeners what you're currently doing with your IHP certification?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm an integrative health practitioner, holistic health coach, also a yoga instructor and plant-based expert. And my business was founded with the intention of helping high achieving leaders to eliminate their bloat, amplify their gut health, and achieve their goals to bring vitality back into their bodies again. And I achieved this mainly by incorporating the 6 pillars of my business. So that would be mindset, movement, plant-based nutrition, helping clients to reduce their toxic load, focusing on sleep hygiene, and of course, stress management. And in my work, my focus is to really support business professionals by developing a deeper understanding of their biological footprint and the food and lifestyle choices that work best for them while improving their overall energy, their balance, health, and well-being.
That's great. Now, is this something that you've always done? What kind of got you to this point? Were you doing something else before you became an IHP?
So my business was really born out of my own personal struggles with my health. I'm a former scientist by trade. I worked in at the time, I was working in the biopharmaceutical industry for over 8 years, where I was working very long hours. I suffered from sleep deprivation. I was stressed out and constantly falling ill. Headaches persisted as a normal occurrence in my day-to-day well-being, even though I was the person eating my veggies at lunch every single day and catching my 6 a.m. bar classes. Yet I was feeling really tired and stressed out almost daily. So, my body was running on overdrive. I kind of liken it to, say, have you ever worked on a computer, where maybe you had too many windows open and then your computer freezes and it starts making that noise like it's about to ramp up and implode?
Like it's about to blow up.
Yeah, that was me, but I kept pushing through it like most people do, not realizing that I was in a constant state of fight or flight. And then one day, I remember it like it was yesterday. This was back in 2014. I started experiencing this debilitated bloating. It was after 3 p.m. My experiment had failed again. I was working as a bench scientist and my stomach got very distended and I looked like I was about 4 months pregnant. And the pain was so unbearable, so painful that it radiated all the way into my lower back. And I remember leaving the lab that day, walking home literally hunched over. At the time I worked in the city and I was 5 minutes away from my job. So from there, I was visiting various medical practitioners and undergoing multiple testing procedures just to figure out what exactly was going on with my gut, only to be sent home with a CVS prescription for digestive enzymes. So I really thought, my lifestyle was normal at the time. But what I'd come to learn is that the reality is that I was misinformed about what I was doing and really exhausted from trying to keep up with an unattainable standard of perfection. I thought that cutting out dairy was going to help me, but it really wasn't going to save the situation that I was in. So I suffered from years of debilitating digestive distress, which really led me on a personal journey to achieving optimal wellness. So I also suffered from having horrible acne on my face, issues with my thyroid, eczema, which are all rooted in poor gut dysfunction. So at the time, I ended up actually leaving that job without having a job. I took several months off to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I traveled, I turned my yoga hobby into a side gig, and I got certified to teach yoga. And at that point, I pursued my first health coaching certification at IIN, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and kept building from there.
And then you did that IHP after IIN?
I did, yes.
Yeah. That's great. And like so many, right? We all have this not all of us, but a good majority of us have this kind of pain to passion story, right? Where we went through something, realized at the time that you left your job, did you think that work had anything to do with the onset of all your symptoms? Had you correlated it to stress yet? Were you like, this job is just completely stressing my life and leading to these health-based issues?
I think fundamentally, I knew that stress was having some sort of a debilitating effect on my body, but I didn't really connect the dots that intimately now where I'm at the stage with my health journey and my business. At that point, I really had hit a wall and I had no choice but to leave, because I was like, if I don't leave, I'm not going to be operating as the professional that I should be within this space. I'm going to be, letting people down, not achieving the results that I would desire working within this role. So I really just had to take the time to leave and really assess like what exactly is going on with me. And then when I took that 3 months off, interestingly enough, my body began to calm down, but at the same time, I didn't really make that deep of a correlation.
Interesting. Yeah, probably wasn't until you did more like education around it and you were like, aha, that's me. That's me.
Yes.
Okay. So what I would love to chat about, because I really feel like this is such a prevalent thing in kind of the coaching space, and we haven't kind of talked about it so specifically yet, is you mentioned that your kind of target clientele, if you will, is mostly high achieving leaders, whether it be, my guess is a majority of them are in the corporate world.
I'd say high achieving entrepreneurs, C-suite executives, middle management leaders, so directors and up. So people who would categorize themselves as being very driven, type A, go, go, go. The world just doesn't stop in pursuit of their dreams.
Okay. So I would love to talk about this and how essentially detrimental it becomes to so many functions, right? But if we really think about where does, hormone imbalance come from, where does, a lot of symptoms that somebody would experience, right? It's all originated in the gut. And it sounds like you work with these clients to, fix, support, rebalance, right? Their gut-based dysfunction as it relates to perhaps the stress that they're under. So talk to us a little bit about what you see as a trend with these clients. What is kind of the most important thing that you start with? How does it look when you're working with these clients?
So most people come to me as a last ditch effort. Usually if you're someone who prescribes as a high achiever, I can definitely relate to this. The world just doesn't stop until you hit a roadblock that's kind of putting you kind of a roadblock that's limiting you from getting to where you want to be. And then you start seeking resources to really help you with kind of narrowing down like what exactly is going on with your body, not really noticing that it's in overdrive. A lot of people that I work with, obviously, stress is a key part of why they are not feeling so well. And I mean, just really helping them to understand and break it down. I definitely leverage my science education and background to kind of bring it down to their level so they know the why of what we're doing and what we're implementing and why they may be feeling the way that they're doing, how they're feeling at the time, and really getting them to understand that what they're doing is not going to be sustainable for long-term results. And also getting them to realize that they can still be a high achieving professional, but work smarter about doing that while being more focused and concentrated on their health. A lot of people come to me, they, for example, have very debilitating bloating. A lot of people are constipated and they don't even realize they're constipated. They may be going a couple of times a day, but they're not really noticing that they're having like slow bowel motility. Or I worked with people who have acid reflux, maybe as a result of like having a hiatal hernia, really diving deep into their gut health and their microbiome and getting them to understand where they are, and being so driven in their life is really putting their body into overdrive, and really getting them to understand that being in a constant state of fight or flight is not going to be good for them in terms of their long-term success and being able to build and succeed and achieve all their heart's desires. So just really getting them to understand like their biological footprint, and getting them to understand by just making some foundational changes that will really help them, that they can incorporate into their current lifestyle for success. So they don't feel like they're limited in terms of focusing on their health, but at the same time being able to achieve and progress with their passions and their desires.
Yes. Yeah. Now, if, someone's listening to this, right? Or I would think, okay, so if you're a high achieving professional, right, you would take your health and kind of be high achieving there, and everything would kind of be like a priority and you would just like be good at everything. But that's not always the case, right? What do you find is the biggest challenge with these clients as far as like getting them to prioritize their health right now? Sometimes, like you said, it usually takes a big thing to slow people like this down, right? The body kind of gives whispers and it talks, and then it's not until like it's screaming that, right, that maybe they're paying attention. But do you find that like labs are super helpful with like quantitative, like here's what's going on? Or is it not until they implement some changes and they see results that they kind of buy into it? Or is it just that you give them kind of so much good quality information and guidance that they're like, okay, I trust you, like, let's go with it?
Yeah, labs are helpful. Blood work is helpful, but I'm not upfront with that. I usually try to give them small, sustainable steps that they can utilize to give them quick wins. I think that a lot of people as high achievers, they really struggle with this concept of slowing down. Like, for example, I work with a lot of women who love to go to Barry's boot camp, or they like to go to Orange Theory, and they're doing all of these high impact exercises, and they're not realizing like how they are further stressing out their bodies and how that is creating a more of a detrimental impact on their overall health, not even just on their gut health, and getting them to understand that that's really the foundation of their well-being, but getting them to slow down and focus on like maybe getting like 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day, focusing on low impact yoga or bar exercises, like really getting them to feel like they can still be involved in the things that they've been doing, but kind of giving them different options until they get to a place where their body is more of in a parasympathetic mode and they're more relaxed and they're calm. Because I don't think people really understand that exercising is a form of stressing your body. And that can actually be more detrimental to your health and not really helping you to achieve your goals if you're constantly doing that 4, 5, 6 times a week and stressing out your body. Your hormones are being compromised, and not just getting them to understand and realize that we can do some slower and incorporate some newer modalities to help you achieve the results that you want, but just being a little bit more smarter about that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always cautious when a client tells me like, I just work out to like relieve stress. So many, we've kind of been given this narrative that exercise is kind of like a form of stress relief, which it absolutely can be. But if you're living your entire 9 to 5, incredibly high strung, high stress, hyper focused, right? Your body doesn't really know that constant focus and constant like rush of stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, that's kind of keeping you going, right, is just you sitting at your computer or in your lab or being a high achiever, right? It's simply like strategizing biologically, like strategizing to escape a threat. And then you go and actually run from the threat, right? Or like you do an hour boot camp and it's even more physically taxing than even just like the mental stress. And so many people think that they're doing a good thing, right? I don't think they don't understand, how I just described it. They think they're doing something really beneficial by going and doing stress relief after work. And it sometimes can make the picture 1,000 times worse, especially for women who are looking to lose weight. Bloating, obviously, it can make it significantly worse, but even from like a metabolic standpoint, right? You just further put the body in that state of, feeling like it's in danger. And it can be such a detrimental way to try to achieve the goals. And if you have somebody that's willing to like do all the things, right? If you just simply change their focus on what they're prioritizing essentially for stress relief, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was definitely a game changer in my health as well. Just learning to slow down and not really engaging in those high impact exercises and working according to my cycle. And that's a whole nother conversation, but really just being smarter, especially, as a woman, and our bodies are so complex, like just being smarter about being gentler on the body.
Yes. Yeah. More is not always more.
That's absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. So when you work with these women, are a majority of them mothers also, are because I feel like that adds an extra layer, right?
Yeah.
What's that kind of demographic like?
Yes. So yeah, motherhood, so much empathy there. Just Yes. So working with a lot of high achieving women who have childcare and caregivers and people to like support them with their um, achieving their goals and helping to not put motherhood on the back burner. But I do work with a lot of women who are mothers, and it's kind of adding that extra layer of being a mother is a full-time job. And I think if you haven't existed within that space and having a young child, even older children, it's a lot of work and it's all consuming. And I think as mothers, you're constantly on, like even at night, it's like, is my child up? Are they sleeping through the night? Can I hear them coughing? It's just like, you're constantly in mother mode, and it kind of be very hard to kind of get out of that, but just really helping mothers to think about how they can strategize by implementing small, sustainable steps in their day to really help them to be a high achieving working mother, but at the same time, setting time aside for self-care so they can be like the best parent and the best employer, entrepreneur, whatever they may be pursuing as they can be, and just giving them the strategies that incorporate into their lifestyle and not just a one size fits all plan, because everybody is different.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And everybody's like structure looks different, right? Like, do they go from, what they're doing with work to like right to, kid mode? Do they have an hour in between where, they have time to themselves? What's their morning look like? Do they have a spouse? Do they, right? There's like so much that goes into, I think like the way that it all looks, like you said, that makes it really important to give a individual approach to it, because everybody's situation is different. Do they have one child? Do they have four?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I don't know how people do it like beyond two, but here we go.
Yes. I mean, I recently went to 3, and I will admit, I was like, I know what I'm doing. Like yes, it's going to be like one more child, but man, the transition I went from 1 to 2, and that was challenging in like the sense that I had a toddler and then I had an infant, but 3 kids, like you really feel like you lose your grip. I'm like, I am no longer able to like really, and I think it's been an important lesson that I've learned about kind of not a control in the sense of like, I want to control every single like outcome, but just like being in control, being like, I got this, right? I no longer do I feel like a majority of the time, do I have it under control?
Yes.
And I've kind of had to really just like, I think, just kind of surrender to that and get in a different place of it's okay. Like, I don't always have it, my hair's not always done like it was before. I don't always like have it all together, but the truth is they have a mom that's, present enough. But I don't know. But so you said beyond 2, I don't know how women do it beyond 3, but I heard that beyond 3, it's just like, you just throw like one more ball in the air and it's chaos no matter what. But I am not.
Yes.
Find out, Ciara. I can.
So you say.
I'm going to trust everybody who says there's no difference after 3.
Yeah. I won't speak that into existence.
And so I want to go back to something that you had mentioned, because you said you do small wins in the beginning. So kind of giving them something that brings up a small win. Do you find that that's a way that really kind of hooks them into taking a different approach to their health and wellness? And then those clients are able to kind of go further rather than giving them like too much to, take all at once, like a too big of a bite, right? And then they kind of don't find a sustainable path moving forward.
Yeah, I think it certainly helps. And what's also interesting is that I find that just giving clients the permission to slow down and surrender. And I didn't even know that they were thinking that they needed permission. And I don't need permission. It's just like just hearing somebody say, I'm going to give you permission to slow down this week. I'm going to give you permission to, versus going to that Barry's boot camp class, like take a morning walk. If it's 10 minutes, it's a win. Like getting them to really understand that by making these small and more sustainable, getting them to do it first and then realizing how they feel afterward and coming back to that conversation. And it's also like a little bit of a therapy session as well, giving them permission and then giving them a little therapy, like getting them to understand, like talking about like where they're at, what are their desires, where would they like to be, and what are they foreseeing for their future really helps them with implementing those small and quick wins, really helps them.
Yes. I love that you say it's a little bit of a therapy session, because I think with a lot of high achievers, perfectionists, that kind of mentality, that type A, oftentimes that can be rooted in childhood based adaptations of, this is how I earned love, right? I was loved the best when I got A's in school. And I was told that if I wanted to like do X, I needed to like work really, really hard, right? Sometimes it's programming and conditioning from our childhood that's really tough to shake. And in a way that is just like so ingrained in a part of us, or we have like something that we're trying to prove in a sense, right? And I'm not saying that this is everybody, but these can be ways that we kind of get in these patterns. And I love that you say like sometimes just giving them permission, because it might be that for some of these people, it's the first time they've ever heard that. They might be 55 years old, and it might be the first time that someone's ever said to them, it's okay to slow down. You actually don't need to, punish yourself for, having this over the weekend and do a Barry's boot camp, or you don't have to do this to, achieve that. And I give you permission to just like pause, stop, and slow down. And to the nervous system, that can be actually sometimes pretty uncomfortable for people, right? But also like a really welcomed sentiment, I think. Do you find how do women usually react when you kind of give them that?
Yeah, it's almost like they just want to, it's almost like an emotional moment for them. Because especially just with working with somebody who has that shared experience of sharing what they're experiencing in terms of their health and their health journey, but also being a high achieving woman and explaining to them like, look, I know what it's like, but I'm telling you, it's not sustainable for long-term success, and you can do things differently. And it's almost like I said, like an emotional moment for them, because it's just like you said, like all of that built-in trauma from childhood, or relationships with your parents, deep-rooted issues that people and challenges that people are dealing with are just kind of surfacing that they didn't even know was there. Like even just from the simple fact of giving them that permission. But at the same time, I also outsource and tell people that if you have a local therapist, or if you need resources for that, getting them to actually get into talk therapy or other modalities that will help them to sort of have like a team of professionals to work with them to complement the work that I'm doing with them is also really helpful.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes, even though like we think it's just going to be this linear process of like, I'm going to like work on my health, sometimes bringing stuff up like that, right, can be a little bit of like, oh gosh, didn't know like that was there. And then like needing to kind of work on that piece to continue to further along someone's health and wellness. So yeah, I do that all the time. It's kind of like suggest, doing some of that work outside, because it allows your focus and what you're doing to be so much more beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely helpful.
Yeah. And when the clients kind of get these small wins and, realize that things are feeling better, they're kind of moving forward, do you still implement lab testing with all of them, or you kind of just use it on an as needed basis? Because I would imagine, or at least I've experienced with some clients, like sometimes just addressing stress and digestion, like just getting stress lower and improving their digestion can alleviate gut-based symptoms, right? So do you kind of use lab testing when like, okay, all these things haven't worked, now let's look at like microbiome and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a case-by-case basis. I'm not someone who certainly just throws a lab test at somebody like, here you go and spend $1,000. I'm trying to be smart about where people are at and just being strategic about the choices and the modalities that I'm giving them as their options, and really diving deep into their health history and, like I said, their biological blueprint to really understand where they're at, and kind of just peeling back the layers like piece by piece, and giving them what I think at the time within our first couple of meetings to see like, okay, maybe this person needs this and we don't have to jump into, lab work so quickly. Or they may have some blood work from their practitioner that we can maybe leverage and utilize to kind of use that as additional information to build out a plan for them. So like I said, with some people, or like you said, it's as easy as sometimes just eliminating certain foods. Some people have certain food sensitivities that they're not aware of. I had one client, excuse me. I had one client who had a very stressful meeting coming up following one of our meetings, and they were very stressed out about it. And I gave them permission to take a walk prior to that meeting and after the meeting, because they were meeting with somebody who was just, very tense, very, I don't know, just a very dominant and intense personality. So every time they met with them, their nervous system would just kind of like be in overdrive. So just kind of just giving them, like telling them, take a walk prior to that meeting. And it sounds so simple, but it's so practical. Like just being out in the sun, getting some fresh air, taking a walk around the block can just do so much for our bodies in the moment when we're dealing with a high stress situation.
Yes. And it can be so oversimplified in our mind. Like there's so many times where I'm like, oh my gosh, am I really going to tell this person to drink more water and take a walk? Like that is like basic human, right? But there are so many people that are not doing the basic human needs, right? Like hydrating well, eating well, moving their body, getting sunlight, and laughing. I mean, honestly, like so many people are missing the mark. And if you go too high level and skip that, like you're just going to have to keep chasing the Band-Aid of whatever's keeping, right, the wheels from falling off the bus if you're not doing the foundations. So I love that you say kind of it's practical advice. It's actionable. You can do it like right now. You don't have to wait for a supplement to come in. You don't have to, wait for the perfect time to do a protocol, because it really is about finding strategies to cope with what life throws at you, because no one's life is perfect. There's always going to be stress. Even if you're not a high achieving leader, I'm sure you're dealing with somebody just like, that client that you just described, where, you're sitting down with somebody who feels more intense, or, maybe like, they're going to give you kind of like more intense vibes. And so that is information that would work for anybody. Right. And I think when we know as much as we know as integrative health practitioners, it can kind of be hard to like remember that like those things are incredibly important, right? Those are the foundations of practical living that people need to incorporate into their life, so that they can utilize them in the moments that make the most sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you can agree with this as well, but common sense is not commonly practiced. But just also, like I said, focusing on mindset is one of the pillars of my business. And I think that like really helping people to get past their limiting beliefs and their fears, and really getting them to speak and not just kind of have it exist within their body and their mind, but to get it out as to why they feel like they can't make these changes or why they're not making these changes. Sometimes just speaking that and then taking that information and kind of package it in a way where we can create a plan for them to help them move in the direction that they desire is really helpful as well. So I find that just getting like a simple mindset shift's really, it's been a huge game changer in working with people.
Yes. Yeah. Creating some of that like stream of consciousness, right? Like if it's not like brought up, it's just why would they think about it otherwise?
Right.
And so you're kind of like that person that, brings some of that out. That mindset, in my opinion, is just about everything.
Yes.
Dr. Hyman recently said, oh gosh, now the quote, but I loved it. I posted on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it, but I think it's something like our mind is the greatest pharmacy, something of that. And I may not be saying it properly, but basically our minds can do wonders for the physical things that are happening within our bodies.
Oh yes. And a lot of it, I know, especially for me is mental, especially with like the gut brain connection, but just really being cognizant about what's going on mentally in order to support my gut health and my overall well-being has really been very helpful in my journey and with my clients as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've actually never told this story on this podcast, but I'm going to tell it. I've told it to many clients, but when I first met my husband, and we were like dating, I was eating, oh my gosh, stuff that, first of all, I never would have, but like stuff like pizza and dessert. And I was just eating stuff that normally would have given me such bloating, bothered my stomach, actually given me acne. I was in my late 20s. And I like said to my sister, I'm like, it's so weird. I'm like eating all this like crap for a better word, like, lack of a better word. and I like feel fine. And she's like, it's because you're happy. And it really was. My nervous system was just like so supported. I did feel so happy. I wasn't really stressing about anything for the first time in my life, just because like I truly felt like, loved.
Yes.
And it was insane, right? Because and when I think back, I didn't, know it that at that time, but now looking back, right, I can see like the total connection.
Yeah. And I often ask my clients the question of, especially if they're experiencing bloating, and I ask them, when was the last time where you remember not experiencing bloat? And like, well, I went on that vacation with my family, but I ate a lot of junk, and I thought that, this food didn't really sit well with me, but I ate it on vacation and I was fine. So I really don't know what's going on. I'm like, there's a whole, piece behind that. Like, you're with your family, you're relaxing, kind of. I mean, if you have some kids, it's kind of like not really relaxing, but kind of relaxing. You're not in like the day-to-day hustle of like
work.
Instead
of having two major stressors, you only have one.
Yes.
So and not work.
And maybe a spouse for support. But yeah, it's like getting them to understand, like, giving yourself more time for self-care in moments like that, where you can just put into yourself, even if it's just spending time with family, where there's just so much joy and love, like relationships, connections, talking to clients about that and seeing what their family life is like and what their friendships are like and, what their home life is like, and getting them to understand, like, in terms of the people that you're surrounding yourself with, like, when are you feeling your best? And when do you find out you're not feeling your absolute best? And kind of take that as extra data, as something that you can implement moving forward to kind of just be more conscious about it and making more time to be in those spaces, or just to eliminate them altogether. Like if you're around somebody who's really toxic and doesn't make you feel good, maybe a reason why you're not feeling so well in your body.
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Such great points. If people are listening and they kind of want to find out more about you or just connect with you, where are all of the places that you show up, websites, social media?
Yes. So people can find me at ciaraclarkwellness.com. I'm also active on Instagram at the same handle, Ciara Clark Wellness. And yeah, you can find me there.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This was such a great interview, and I thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you again.
Thanks, Ciara. Talk to you soon.
Right. Bye.